Some call them lunchtime lifesavers. Others call them the most perfect sandwiches to ever exist. At Zaxby's, we just call them our signature fan favorites. The Southern TLC Filet Sandwich has hand-breaded chicken with fresh tomato and crisp lettuce. The famous Kickin' Chicken Sandwich features spicy tongue torch and Cool Ranch sauces. And for a limited time, fried pickles are back. 2 classic sandwiches and a legendary appetizer. 3 more reasons you're gonna get a kick out of Zaxby's.
From Tally to Cali,
it's time
to wake up.
Wake up, wake up, wake up. Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
And this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! What's up, everybody? It's Wake Up Warchant, proudly presented by Zaxby's. Indescribably good chicken, but also zappetizers and salads. Everything you could possibly want to make it through your day in terms of culinary delights, you can find it practically at Zaxby's. Give them a whirl. Tell them we sent you. We, being myself and Corey Clark, we both work for Warchant.com, the ultimate Seminole sports source. Warchant30, that's a promo code. That'll get you 30 free days of access. Corey, how are you, man? I can't wait to put my arms around you, man. I think we're opening up here in Florida, man. It's only a matter of time. Reunited. Let's do it.
I don't think I'll let you put your arm around me necessarily, because then you're breathing on my neck. But I'm gonna from about 6 or 8 feet, I'm gonna shoot you the guns. Like, hey, partner. Hey there, guy. What's up, dog? You know, something like that. But I'm probably not. It's not going to be a long embrace.
You're really not going to let me hug you ever again, are you?
I'm telling you. I think handshakes are a thing of the way. They're gone the way of the dodo, and I think hugs might be right there behind it, unless it's a significant other, like Jeff Cameron. For the people that don't know, Jeff Cameron hosts a weekly talk show in Tallahassee. And also a wildly popular podcast with myself and Irish Chaffel. But Jeff Cameron is a hugger, man. Like, he sees somebody he hadn't seen, just a buddy. He'll see me at a bar. Yeah. He's bringing it in for a bear hug.
That's what you're supposed to do, coming for the real thing.
No. That stuff's over. He's going to get a headbutt the next time he tries to hair it. He's a bigger guy than I am. So if it got physical. By the way, to completely change subjects, I've always thought if I was in a fight with someone that's much bigger than me, or even my own size, I guess, I think headbutts are really underutilized.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're not, like, even if I land a solid punch, I haven't punched anybody in 30 years. But even if I land a solid punch to the face or the nose, it's probably really going to hurt my hand.
Nah. You watch.
But, it's got to be, you got to hit it in the sweet spot, man. For an amateur person like me that doesn't throw punches, to land a punch so flushly that it doesn't hurt my hand. But I really feel like a headbutt, you don't feel that at all if you do it right.
Just don't hit their forehead with your fist. You'll be okay. There's nothing else on the face that's going to hurt your hand other than if you hit their forehead.
What about the orbital bone? I feel like the orbital bone would hurt.
No, the orbital bone is going to fracture before your hand does. But, yeah, Mercedes Mike, friend of the program, pulled out the headbutt, 2003, Notre Dame. It was a thing of beauty.
Telling you, man, because nobody sees it coming. Like, no. You get ready to square up, and then somebody just does like a crazy headbutt chop to your face. Man, you're down like you got hit by Tyson, and then I'm just sitting there and I could just drink a beer. There's nothing. I mean, my head's fine. It's the crown of my head. It's a skull. It's the hardest thing in the body.
And that story, that legend will perpetuate around you forever. It's the ultimate street cred move. You won't have to work out again in the rest of your life because no one will ever mess with you because they're like, that guy did that. He headbutted that dude, dropped him like a bad habit. But we're all about love on the program. We're all about love. Sorry.
So, Jeff Cameron, if you're listening, which I know you are, it's probably where he gets all his ideas from for his shows. Just know that if you try to hug me in any capacity again, it's going to be headbutt time. It's going to be instinctual. It's going to be reactionary. I can't even control it. It's just going to happen. It's like somebody being tickled and throwing an elbow. You try to hug me, I feel like a headbutt's coming to your chin.
What's he up to? What are they 5 days a week still?
I think so. At least 4 days a week. I think Tuesday, whenever we do headlines, he uses that for his show, I believe, which he's been doing anyway. But I think that the other days, I don't know if they're doing 3 hours a day, but they're definitely doing shows.
Yeah. Well, kind of like us right now. We do 3 days a week, but really I commandeer and pilfer War Chat for one of the shows per week. So, again, that'll be dropping on Wednesday. It's Gene Williams, the founder and administrator of Warchant.com, with Corey talking to PK Sam. about the 2003 Florida victory, 38-34 in the Swamp. It was a good one. I don't really want to steal a lot of thunder from it, but I think you guys both did a good job of setting the table, setting the stage for when PK hopped on the show, and I think it brought new information to the table. That's my thing about speaking about victories and remember when. I just feel like from the successes, there really aren't a lot of untold stories because everybody's so eager to talk about it when it happens in the moment that we don't really learn a lot. But I think I learned a good bit during that war chat. That's why I'm always fascinated by the setbacks, the losses, because no one ever wants to talk about those. Then slowly you can start pulling them out of them, and it's like, oh, wow, no, that's why that happened. But anyway, that'll be Wednesday. Friday, we'll do Renegade Express, as we always do, and maybe even another happy hour because we got Zoom now. Oh, speaking of Zoom, sorry, Corey, before I lay out everything we're doing on Warchant this week, Wednesday will be a live chat, 7 p.m. Eastern time with Corey and Michael Langston this time. Corey taking over for me. He'll field some questions with recruiting, and Michael Langston.
What?
All right, I was waiting for you to get a little nervous there. So I kind of want to make sure you're listening to me sometimes.
I was listening, but that's not true, is it?
No, but Michael Langston he'll have a live recruiting chat on Zoom. I'll be emceeing, moderating it. We'll take phone calls from people 850-792-5730, and as well post your questions on the premium recruiting board. He'll answer that as well. All right, not a lot of Florida State-centric stuff to talk about, Corey, but gosh darn it, we're going to talk about football. And when you talk about college football, everything does come back to Tallahassee at some point because we the best, I think, as somebody once said. Maybe it was Socrates, Voltaire, one of those guys.
Yeah, Socrates.
So I think some of the things that happened on Friday after this show went to air or was published, and then kind of over the weekend, and I think I saw Gene posted on the Tribal Council of Warchant was, as states start opening up, and to a large degree, the SEC, the states that comprise that conference, I don't want to say they're chomping at the bit to get back open any more than any other country or any other state in our lovely country, but it sounds like most of them are on board with trying to get their schools back on campus, students back on campus for fall classes, and then to proceed with football. ACC, meanwhile, we do have Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, some states that are a little bit more affected by the pandemic, so that could potentially cause an issue. But Greg Sankey, I think, went on either the Feinbaum show or somewhere and was talking about basically – We're not going to all wait for everybody. Yeah, we're not going to wait for our buddy to get out of the bathroom before we grab another round. We're just going to go ahead and leave the bar. Be like, hey man, just catch me at the next spot. We'll be there. Just when you're done wrapping up, we'll be over there. All the conferences though. Could you imagine if the SEC is going to be forget all y'all, we're good. Could you imagine just the 14 of them playing football? Would all 14 have to be on board, or do you think what he was saying is if 8 of us are ready to go and 7 are ready from the Big Ten and 5 are from the ACC, then that's what we're going to do? What was your interpretation of his comments?
Yeah, I think it was more about just the SEC. Hey, we don't need the rest of you conferences to play. We can play. We're the big money makers anyway. We can play our conference season, and heck, half the time whoever wins our conference is winning the championship anyway, so we'll just declare whoever wins the SEC championship game the national champion, just like they did back in the 40s. They would go 6-2-2 and declare themselves the national champions, and now it's on their media guides forever. So that's a normal SEC thing. Just play 7 games, go 5-2. Georgia, declare yourself the national champion. I think, I'm really interested in that because I do think. I think we all know that the SEC. I know it's a cliche. It's their stupid slogan, but it does mean more to them. That is the lifeblood of some of those states. What else are you going to do in Alabama if you're not watching Auburn, Alabama football? What else are you going to care about? So I do think there is a chance that, and it should not be political at all. It shouldn't be. It should come down to science and doctors, but it is political. We've seen that over the last 6 or 7 weeks. It's political, and red states are going to be more likely to open up than blue states. I think we both agree on that, right?
Yeah.
In Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky. Is Kentucky a red state?
Their governor,
I think
is a Democrat, but yeah, they vote in a national.
And
election.
what does it matter if Kentucky plays football or not? It doesn't. So I think that's maybe what you could be looking at. But yeah, man, if the will is strong in that conference, then that's gonna happen. I think the SEC will make sure they play a football season. And to me, even outside, because I don't cover an SEC team, I mean, I live in SEC country. Most of us that are listening to this show do. I think that if the SEC says, you know what, we're doing it. We're going to take these measures. We're going to really try to limit the risk, but we're having a football season. I do think the ACC might follow suit. I do. And if Duke wants to say we're not doing it, okay, Duke, don't do it. But you know what, Duke? You don't make nearly as much money. If football doesn't matter as much to you. And you have to be smart. It can't be all willy-nilly, hey, football's the only thing that matters. Get out there, risk your lives. I'm not saying that. But again, like we've talked about ad nauseum for the last 4 weeks, we got 3.5 months until this thing starts. We'll see what we look like. The testing numbers keep going up. The positive rate keeps going down. So those are good signs. So maybe we'll be there. But I do think, I guess to answer your question, I do think if the SEC, I think it's more of along the lines of we'll play. We'll play, it's 14 teams. We'll play 7 games a week. And we'll play an 8-game, 9-game schedule. I guess 9 games. I can't remember how many conference games they have.
They do
8. They do 8. So maybe they do 9. And so each team plays 9 games. They have a 9-game season. And they will make more money than they've ever made before. Because the ad rates and the ratings for those games will be through the roof, especially if they're the only game in town. Because I tell you what, I don't make a point normally of watching Arkansas, Texas A&M. What would I care? But if it's a live football game and I'm at home with nothing else to do, I'm watching Arkansas, Texas A&M. Know what I mean? Especially with all those
Jimbo Fisher's out there, man.
The Jimbo Fishers, the Kendall Brileses. Mm-hmm. I mean, come on, man. Kendall Briles is SEC through and through. It's in his blood. He tweeted about it. It just means more. 15 draft picks, man. 15 first-round picks. So, yeah, I don't think that answered your question, but I'm just trying to talk to make the time go by.
I appreciate it. Hopefully everybody that's listening to this does as well. Yeah, I just wonder if it does get to that kind of point, and again, man, we're not predicting doom and gloom or anything like that. But it just, I think we all figured that we were supposed to peak out like 10 days ago or so, and apparently we didn't, or I don't know, we had like a pretty high, we had a pretty bad day on Friday as a nation when it comes to a body count, or I don't even know the proper way to say it. But like, I just wonder if certain institutions will be allowed to proceed if they think they're in a different. I mean, listen, Syracuse is upstate New York, and we're not talking about like NYU or Columbia, which obviously, if they had football programs, like there's no way you could imagine them being ready to hold a football game at any point in time. But I just wonder if it gets to a point where Clemson is like, hey, man, we're good. We feel fine with what we can do. Florida State, obviously, heavily relying on football to pave the way for everything else. Like, would they be able to get like a hall pass? Like, can you go to John Swofford and be like, hey, we're good. We feel fine. We can play some games. But then it's, I guess, at that point, it's how are you going to schedule things? If 5 teams in the ACC are like, we're good, but then the other 9.
I just think the way this country is, by the way, if you have an AR-15, please don't storm the Capitol. Just that's a weird look. But when you look at these images from around the country with these protests, and you saw that California, I think it was Huntington Beach. Remember how everybody made fun of Florida?
Right.
Florida was the laughing-stock of the country. Look at those imbeciles down there. Look at those imbeciles down there in Florida. those red state imbeciles. Get it home, people. And then you show California, the bluest of blue states, or one of them, and they're all over each other. They're having a crazy protest with thousands of people in the streets. My point is that it's all over the country now. There are pockets all over the country where people are just like, they're losing their minds, and they want to get. I'm not even saying that it's losing their minds to want to get out and be.
Get my hair cut. I want to get my hair
anything,
cut.
Just do anything again. I get it. We're all cooped up. So that's not what I'm talking about, losing their minds.
No, we're not. You're in Georgia. You're free. You've been liberated.
Well, that's true, man. That's true. I bowled a 218 on Saturday.
Stop it. Get out.
Easily my highest score.
Are you serious?
No, of course not.
I was about to say, why don't we lead the show off with that then?
No, but I've been golfing.
Okay.
mostly socially distant, but at times we were 4 feet away instead of 6 feet away. But yeah, so you look at all these pockets around the country, man, and we're only in May. Imagine being like, just try to fast forward in your mind to the middle of August, and you're still telling people, no, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. The middle's not going to hold, man. It should. I'm not saying it shouldn't. If it's really dangerous, I get it. I do. And I'm not saying I'm against it, but I'm just looking at the way the country is going, the trend. And I can't imagine in the middle of August people are still going to be okay with, all right, I'm going to stay at home.
Right.
My life is just, you tell me when I can get back to enjoying sports again.
All right, well, yeah, well, let's not get too far away from the sporting aspect of it then. But
no, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You tell me when I can go to a football game again, because obviously I can't make up my own mind, and obviously they can't play. So we'll just be in this cocoon, this bubble forever. It's just not tenable. I don't think that's realistic, and I do think I do. I think that it's going to become a point, maybe not college football, but because, again, it's tied to higher education. But I believe that every other sport will be playing. I just do. And I do think they'll come up with some because how do you explain, okay, it's okay to have these protests at the Capitol and to have these protests in the middle of the streets, but don't congregate to watch a football game. We're going to arrest you. I mean, how's that going to work? How's that going to play?
Isn't one protected by the Constitution or whatever, the right to assemble?
Hey, you know what? I don't know what amendment it is, but I'm pretty sure they had in there that we have an inalienable right to watch college football games.
You're right. Right?
You're right. Adams was a huge Texas Longhorn fan. Yeah. You know that.
That's right. Hook 'em.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I just I'm
So don't you think, like, you see these things around the country, it's just hard to project 4 months from now that we're still just, you can't go do that. You can't play football. You can't watch football. You can't gather and watch football. I just wonder
if some schools are in better position for it, or if some schools just feel like they're going to open themselves to lawsuits and liability if they do open up their campuses too early, or if they do allow people to congregate in a stadium. Meanwhile, other ones won't care. Like, how can you pull that off? Like, will there be? I don't know if that was your point about the middle won't hold, but that's my kind of thinking at this point. And that's really
but
just
to keep
for today. I don't
right,
think this is. I don't think we're going to. Again, this is something we need something to talk about. So this is all we really can talk about today. I just wonder if there's like a fracture within conferences of like, hey, 6 of us are ready, 8 of us aren't. What do you want us to do? If it's gonna, is it just like a jury? Is it going to be a hung trial? Like, are we going to go back and sit down and talk and figure this all out until? I mean, I think. Don't you think that we're all grown-ups. Everybody playing the sport, everybody watching the sport, everybody overseeing the sport are grown-ups. So you can ask, are you comfortable playing? Okay, here's a waiver. Get everybody to sign it. Say you're comfortable playing, and you can play. And anybody that doesn't want to play, that's fine. You sit out the season. But there are some of these schools and a lot of these players and a lot of these coaches that want to play. So again, I think you can be a grown-up about it. You're gonna have to make some changes, obviously. We all know that. All the players want to play. I'm just talking about like chancellors and school presidents and deans and things like that, and then conference commissioners.
I mean, yeah, I get it. And again, I think college football is the toughest of the bunch because, like I said, it's higher education. There's really, honestly, there'd be no real reason for the NFL not to play. As long as you're getting those tests, which, God willing, will be readily available in 4 months, there'd be no reason to play. And you could get them to sign waivers.
No reason to not play, you're saying.
Not play. And you get them to sign waivers. And 95 to 99% of those guys will sign those waivers because this is their, not only is it their life and their livelihood, it's their passion. It's what they've grown up wanting to do. They want to play. So do these NBA players.
You saw LeBron James. Don't take this away from me. I'm on the doorstep of another ring.
Nobody's talking about canceling anything. That was his tweet, which absolutely. You can play in October if you need to. But again, let's see what it looks like before we just go making blanket statements. And I know I just made a blanket statement about 4 minutes ago, but I do think that the narrative, not the narrative, because that implies that something was fake or not. The mood of the country will have shifted to a point by the middle of August where I feel like people will think, you know what, it's time. Just whether it's college football or not, it's time to get back to somewhat of normalcy. And if you have to put 20,000 people in the stands instead of 80,000, let's do it. We have to have a college football season. We have to have college classes. We have to have college. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's a dollars and cents game, man. And are these presidents and chancellors going to not have classes?
Oh,
There's going to be universities that are going to literally crater. They're going to crumble and be non-existent if you don't have classes. And think about all the thousands of employees that all of a sudden lose their jobs or don't get paid.
Think about the librarians. Librarian lives matter.
The incredible amount of money you're losing there. So yeah, I just think that they will. And going back to the SEC might have to lead the way with this. And I think what happens, because again, that's why I brought up the governors and the colors of the states. The governors, I guess, would have the overall say, I think.
Yeah, man. It seems like the federal government is really putting all the onus on governors.
And I can promise you, Brian Kemp here in Georgia, he's all for it. We could be watching college football right now. That dude just is all willy-nilly. Let's get out there. Let's see what happens. So Brian Kemp is going to let Georgia play football if Georgia wants to play football. And if Georgia plays football and Alabama plays football and the Mississippi schools play football, and then you're going to have Florida State fans looking at Swofford like, hey, what? Why are they playing and we can't? Because we're in the ACC, the prim and proper tuxedo-wearing, champagne-sipping ACC, we can't play football, so we're going to lose all this money. Hey, is Coach Krzyzewski still going to have a job, though? Like, I think that's going to be that it could become a critical mass there if the SEC opens it up and has a football a schedule and a football games, and the ACC sitting in the same part of the country, other than the few up there in the north that don't really matter, sitting in the same part of the country that they're not going to be playing. You tell me Dabo and Norvell and Fuentes and the people at the real football schools, I guess what's his name?
Singular.
Fuente I forgot his name, the Miami coach.
Oh, Manny Diaz.
Yeah, they're going to be like, yeah, hey, Swofford said we can't play. Well, what about Alabama's playing Ole Miss this weekend? Hey, our commissioner said we can't play. No. I just don't see that flying. And so what I'm saying is I think the SEC will be the pioneer, much like
pioneer.
When I know I keep going. I keep talking. But much like when the schools started canceling their conference tournaments of basketball.
Right.
And it was a domino effect. Now, those dominoes went really quickly, like within the span of 8 minutes. As soon as they saw Swofford talking out of his behind at a press conference, like, well, we don't want this. So they all canceled their conferences within literally a matter of 25 minutes. I think it would work in the opposite direction here. As soon as the SEC says, you know what, we're playing. Here's our guidelines. Here's our setup. Here's how we're going to do it. There will be immense pressure on the other conferences to play, because that's so much money on the table. So that's how I think it'll work.
So what do you think Florida State's record's going to be in 2020, Corey?
7-2.
What would
5-3.
What would 7-2 get us into?
A 7-2. I feel like that might be a New Year's Six game.
Yeah, we're back. Florida State is back.
The New Year's Six now is if you win 6 games.
Oh, so
because you only play 8. Yeah, I'd do the Cotton Bowl. I like the Cotton Bowl. That'd be fun. Would we even cover it? Would we even go? Would we be allowed to watch?
Probably not all of us. I wonder how that will happen if they limit press. I mean, thankfully, Doe Campbell Stadium's press box was constructed with this whole social distancing thing in mind. I mean, golly, the press box spans from the 10-yard line to the 10-yard line.
Yeah, it's still a lot of air circulating. I'll be up on the roof. I can see better up there anyway.
That'd be great. I wonder if they could retrofit the press box into being open air. That would be amazing.
I mean, I feel like we could just take a sledgehammer.
Yeah, but anyhow, I would imagine, because I think we were even kind of anticipating or bracing for that with the NCAA tournament when we obviously didn't know a lot about what was going on. And yeah, there would be no fans, so they'll probably still have media, but they'll probably limit the amount of media. I would think that, I don't know if they would allow Warchant to swing its what around and be like, yeah, we're 4 deep. This is how we roll.
Right.
Ultimate Seminole Sports Source. And I'm like, yeah, you can only send one writer.
Well, truthfully though, if you just had who's in the press box, people that actually cover the team, and you get rid of the. I mean, there's always 30 or 40 people in the press box that aren't doing anything. and just say, and you could spread us out, I think we'd be fine.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that's what people are probably most concerned with right now, Aslan, I'd say, is press box seating.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to the press when we get back to sports?
Well,
And folks, just know that we're gonna do our best to have all 4 or 5 of us, how many we want, in the press box covering games for you.
Just, can you imagine like asking questions with a mask on? Like, I can't hear you.
I'm going to text them. I'm going to text the questions to Norvell.
Although I hope this ends the scrum environment of interviews, which I think it's going to.
Oh, it definitely will. I'm telling you, there are consequences of this thing that'll change the way we behave for maybe the rest of our lives, at least for a generation. Handshakes are gone. You already heard what's going to happen when people start trying to hug people again. And then, these scrums where you're like 45 people, like watching that Jordan documentary, and you see him outside the locker room, there's 38 people within 10 feet. It's crazy. There's microphones in his nose. Yeah. So hopefully those days are over.
I can't believe like the Writers Associations allowed that stuff to even happen. But then the pushback's going to be, well, we're going to lose access to the guys. And I'm like, well, you know what, man? We don't need to talk to 9 players after a game. Put 3 of them on a podium. We're good. But again, I'm in the minority. On that.
Sure.
Otherwise, over on Warchant.com, a story by our guy, Irish O'Fell, managing editor. Players are working out in small groups, in some cases, around the capital city, thanks to a former defensive back, Michael Cornegay. Or is it Cornegay?
I think it's Cornegay. I mean, it's spelled Cornegay.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's, wanted to err on the side of caution or whatever.
Corn dog.
There we go. Madison County, Greenville, represent. 32340, I think is this.
Hey, by the way, speaking of Madison County, it was cool to see Chris Thompson was signed by the Jaguars.
Let's go. I know.
Hey,
man.
and they did. So the Jaguars didn't pick up Fournette's option
for a 5th year.
So does that mean he's still on the team?
Yes. Which is that
Okay,
I didn't get it either. This whole 5th year option thing about like Mitch Trubisky not getting picked up. It's like, well, he got drafted in 17, 18, 19. Something like. Right. Yeah. So, this is like their money year or whatever.
It's cool that Chris Thompson's sort of close to. I mean, he's back in his home state.
Yeah,
that'll be cool. I hope he makes it happen.
I mean, quite literally, it's the closest he could play to his hometown. So.
It really is. Yeah.
On the flip side of that, the news of Terrence Smith, obviously, extremely disappointing to hear.
Yes.
Man, that's you want to talk about bad things happening and being interested in wanting answers. Just how his career's kind of wound up to where he's at now is very leads many questions.
Well, and for the people that don't know, he was arrested for, I don't know how to word it. It's a family show, having relations with someone that was 17, right?
I didn't see the actual number.
I thought that's what it was. I thought that, but I think the actual age was 17.
Okay.
So, and I think the rule in Florida that I didn't know, which makes sense, but I think it's if you're over 24 as a person, because there's plenty of 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds. That's not a crime.
Right.
But I think if you're over 24, it's considered a crime. I could be completely wrong. You might have to go edit that out of the show, Aslan, but that's what I thought I read.
Let me write that down. But anyway, where I was going with this. So, Madison County, better stuff.
Yeah.
One of their own.
Yeah, Chris Thompson, a great kid.
But some of these players are working out in groups of 9, obviously because they have a trainer that's 10, so they are kind of maintaining some of these guidelines. When I saw the photo of Kalen DeLoach, I'm like, man, it looks like a Hamsa Jalen hybrid. So good for Kalen, looking like he's getting all getting ripped and all that good stuff, or whatever. Anywho, are you concerned at all about like the quality of football when we do come back? Because I was watching all these classic games on NBC Sports Network over the weekend, which was awesome. Man, I mean, for you, I imagine it's got to be even more enjoyable because, I mean, the 80s is really your wheelhouse. And it was kind of like, I was coming into my formative years, figuring things out up from down and whatnot during the 80s. But, like, watching all these, these teams, like the golden age of college football where these kids really were student athletes. Every time a kid makes a tackle, they show his little headshot with where he's from and what his major is. But there was the Miami, they were showing the 87 Fiesta Bowl, 86 season where they wore the fatigues and lost to Penn State, which...
Yeah, right.
I mean, you don't want to say a game that's talked about like that for this long is like underrated, but Just in terms of like the absolute, how did they lose that game? What a bunch of losers, Miami.
Well, how many?
Five
picks, five interceptions,
5 picks,
yeah.
2 fumbles. I mean, they had like 440 yards of offense. Penn State had like 180, and Penn State won a national title. Gosh, freaking Joe Paterno.
Who was the Penn State? I know Penn State had Blair Thomas, right? Was that or DJ
Kurt
Dozier?
Warner. No, it was Kurt Warner, I think. Or Kurt.
Was it Kurt Warner? Was their running back? I thought it was DJ Dozier.
It was Dozier. Yeah, Dozier had the huge game for sure. Had the big game.
So it wasn't. And then I can't remember who their quarterback was, but he wasn't Vinny Testaverde.
John Schaefer. He was terrible.
But what was cool about that game, and I think I brought it up on this show before, was that
Blair
back
Thomas.
then,
You're right. I'm sorry. You're right. DJ Dozier and Blair Thomas.
There you go. The 1-2 combo, thunder and lightning. I like to call them.
Yeah.
But back then, number 1 never played number 2 in a bowl game.
Yeah.
Ever. It just didn't happen. That's why in 1980, Florida State didn't get to play Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, because they had already agreed to play in the Orange Bowl 3 weeks before, and they didn't match up. Georgia had to go to the Sugar Bowl. It was dumb. And that's why Notre Dame was in the Sugar Bowl, is because Notre Dame at the time was undefeated. But then they lost to a terrible Georgia Tech team, or tied or something, and then dropped in the polls, but they still went to New Orleans because they had signed the contract on November 5th. That's how national championships used to be decided. But anyway, what was cool is the Fiesta Bowl was independent. It didn't have a connection with any conference. And I guess they must have paid Penn State and Miami a ton of money to say, look, Miami, instead of going and playing Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl again, you just played them earlier in the season. And Penn State, instead of playing wherever you'd play,
Rose Bowl probably.
Bowl, right? Yeah, even though they weren't a Big Ten school. You're both independents. You're not tied to a conference. And y'all are both 1 and 2 in the country. So instead of going to one of the big granddad, because back then the Fiesta Bowl wasn't the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It was like a, it was crazy. It was lower than the Gator Bowl.
It was like the Chick-fil-A Bowl of 9 years ago, and like they were trying to kind of elbow their way into the big. Now they are
they made it. But back then it wasn't like Florida State back in the 70s would play in the Fiesta Bowl. Or the 60s. Like it was just like where you sent the 3 lost teams. And then whoever was the leader of the Fiesta Bowl just had a unbelievable moment in history. Was like, you know what? We're an independent bowl. They're 2 independent teams. They're not tied to conferences. Let's pay them each $3 million or whatever it was, the going rate at the time. Let's double the going rate, and we can have an all-time number 1 versus number 2 game. And that kind of started the trend of, well, this was awesome. This was great. Let's get the Bowl Alliance. And then the Bowl Alliance turned into the, what was it called?
BCS.
What came out? The BCS nonsense, and now we have playoffs. But all that really, I think, started with the Fiesta Bowl because they organized the 1 versus 2 matchup.
Yeah,
which Miami probably should have gone to the Orange Bowl and beaten Oklahoma again.
And that was one of the first bowls to get like a major sponsor too. Like they had Sunkist attached to it, which gave them money. And they played that game actually on January 2nd. They moved it off of New Year's Day to be able to showcase it. And obviously, we're here now with the playoff and all that. But watching that game, I mean, I don't know where I fall on this sort of spectrum, so you're going to have to help me walk through this, Corey. But, like, Miami scored a touchdown, and their tight end, I don't even know how long the drive was. It might have been like 5 or 6 plays. Their tight end catches a touchdown, and he gets over to the bench, and he starts breathing in oxygen. And it just started making me think about, like, when's the last time, I guess maybe Timmy Jernigan, but, like, you don't see guys huffing oxygen on the sideline anymore because, like, football now is so specialized and we train the heck out of these guys. And it made me start thinking about the whole pay-for-play thing where it's like, does the fact that these football players are being trained and pushed so hard, which makes them be really high-performing athletes, does that make them like more deserving of the money because of all the work they're putting in? Or is it one of those things where they are getting all this training, they are getting all this nutrition and conditioning, that maybe that should be more factored into how they're being paid? Because, I feel like the 1980s, 86 Florida State team probably did not have training table, did not have a 25,000 square foot gym that was just theirs, and didn't have smoothies and massages and electric stim machines and saunas and everything. So it's like, I'm just trying to work myself through like who deserves to get paid more, like the student athlete in 1987 or the student athlete in today's climate.
Yeah, I mean, man, when you think about what the Miami facilities, what they used to be, I mean, they were high school-esque. And it didn't matter. That 86 team had 83 team that now won the national championship, and that 86 team was the best in the country, and then they won it in 87. Yeah, man, they're facilities were basically non-existent. And I think their weight room was just a bunch of tires that they flipped to each other. I think I remember reading that. You might want to check up on that, Aslan. You might want to read on that. But I think they would just like Michael Irvin would flip a tire to Benny Blades and he'd flip it back. I think is the only way they worked out. And they'd run in sand and they'd go chase rabbits. I'm pretty sure that's it. But man, I just think when we get back to that discussion, it's more about what you because again, it's not like the schools are paying them. This is just them making money off their name. If it was like, Florida State sets aside $1.5 million to pay its roster, but that's not really happening. So it's not really even deserve. It's what you're worth. And if Toyota thinks that getting James Blackman to jump in the air and say, hey, buy a Toyota, I can't remember what that ad was. Do you remember those, or are you too old for that? Those commercials were the end of a Toyota commercial. They'd all jump in the air and say, that's great. But they wouldn't say that's great. That's Tony the Tiger. But anyway, that was their ad.
All right.
Yeah, so, but if they're willing to pay James Blackman to do that, then that's what he's worth. Yeah. I don't know that it has to do with, obviously they get a lot more perks. It's just, what it boils down to is, no, it's not fair. It's not fair that, let's name someone. Marvin Williams. I only bring him up because the Hawks drafted him instead of Chris Paul. Marvin Williams has made more money in his NBA career than Michael Jordan, probably by a wide margin. That's not fair, but that's just, sports weren't that big a deal financially in 1986 and 1988. They are now. Yeah. So, sorry.
All right. Well, then how about to the conditioning aspect? I kind of think about that too then, because
absolutely. And Gene brought that up on the happy hour. Like, they do get, I don't know if it's world-class training, but at all these big-time football programs, they get great training. They get highly paid professionals that know what they're doing. They try to get them in their body right, feed them the right things, watch them work out, get them a plan to become a better football player, a better athlete, and they might end up making a lot of money down the road by how they were, groomed in college. I do see that side of it. Well, but again...
You're on a heater. I don't want to interrupt you. I just meant more trying to pivot back to the original thing I was talking about, which is, again, it's my fault for not communicating these things well. But do you have any concern? Like, is football going to look noticeably worse when it does start back up because there won't be the regimented sort of training that they've come accustomed to? Like, watching all those games from the 80s this past weekend I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think it's actually going to be great. I don't know if it's going to be any better, but I'm not worried about that. I'm not concerned. I hope no one gets injured. Like, that'd be my biggest concern, but I don't think the product is going to suffer at all.
Yeah, and I think they'll get. It might be a little. They're always sloppy in the beginning anyway. It might, if you didn't get to practice, if you didn't get to keep your body in the shape that it needed to be, you might get some sloppiness early in the season before you're completely in game shape. But no, by and large, I don't think you'll be able to notice much. Again, it's not like. Most of these schools really only miss the spring, right?
Right.
I know they're missing being around their nutritionists and being around their weight training staff, but you hope they're holding up somewhat of their end on those fronts, and then they'll be maybe 8 pounds overweight or 8 pounds underweight. But you'd hope that could come off pretty quick.
I wonder about strength though. After I say all that, I do wonder about because
won't everybody be in that same boat? So it'll still look kind of the same.
Exactly. Yeah. So there is that, but
except Alabama, I'm sure they're all in a bunker. So have you seen an Alabama football play? I don't follow them on Twitter. Do you?
I don't. No, I don't.
Because I'm pretty. They might all be in a bunker 10 stories below the earth.
I'm sure
where the virus can't live.
They all got like squat racks mailed to them, probably with
weirdly,
barbells
weirdly that
and,
happened.
500 pounds of free weight. So.
Right.
Yeah, but it's good to see these guys still. There's several players. I don't want to single them out and then have everybody else be like, "What's the other guy doing?" But read the story on Warchant.com. Nice breakdown.
Hey, by the way, a shout out. Not only does Ira have that bad boy up, but then I'm going to have one about the Sweet 16 starts today for our bracket challenge of the best player of all time. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure who we start with. I think it's going to be the offensive playmakers. I think that's the order we've been doing it in. So then that one is going to be Charlie Ward versus Warwick Dunn and Jameis Winston versus Dalvin Cook. So
Where are you again when it comes to factoring in professional or post-Seminole career into?
I think it's fair to do it. I mean, because so my point was I wrote an article about just this Sweet 16. And it's not an article about, well, look at all this great players that Florida State had. I've written that enough. We get it, Corey. You know a lot about Florida State football history, and you can remember some games and remember some players. It's not about that as much as it is just kind of a breakdown of each matchup. And what I brought up is like Janikowski versus Aguayo. Janikowski bombarded Aguayo. Like it wasn't close, which is crazy because if you look at their college numbers, no, it wasn't close. Roberto Aguayo was a much better college kicker than Sebastian Janikowski. Aguayo missed like 5 kicks total or 6 kicks. Janikowski missed like 20. And most of Janikowski games were absolute blowouts. He didn't have any kicking with pressure. Janikowski missed an extra point in a national championship game. An extra point. That's why Florida State lost 23-16 instead of 23-17 to Tennessee. But I did say, look, I get it because one guy was in the league for what, a year?
Yeah.
And the other guy was in the league for 2 decades. So I can understand why you would pick Janikowski. I guess technically he was a better kicker. He ended up being a much better kicker, but Aguayo was better in college. But I think you're allowed to do that. Just like I think you're allowed to, if it was Warwick Dunn versus Dalvin Cook, I think you're allowed to take into Warwick Dunn's good deeds off the field. Not that Dalvin's a terrible person, but you're allowed to take into account what Warwick Dunn's done off the field and also what he did in the league, where he ran for over 10,000 yards and scored a bunch of touchdowns.
Yeah, so I was thinking.
What about Winston versus Ward?
That's the thing. Like Jameis would win it, but the fact that his NFL
you
career. You
think so? You think Jameis is going to win that one?
No. If his NFL career wasn't where it's at right now, if he wasn't a backup in New Orleans, like if he had actually won a playoff game by now, which I think everybody listening to this podcast was anticipating him at least at this point in his career, at least winning one playoff game, just at least getting to the playoffs. If he would have done at least one of those sort of things. I would absolutely
I still think he's got a chance against. I mean, Charlie never won an NFL game. Period. Aslan,
right?
Never won an NFL game. Period. Now he won a couple playoff NBA games, but come on.
Yeah.
But where I really think that'll come into play, and I write about this, is there's a Sweet 16 matchup that's Marvin Jones versus Derek Brooks. So, in my opinion, and just in my opinion, and I'm not telling anyone how to vote, I would vote for Marvin Jones because he's the best college linebacker I've ever seen. But I certainly can understand the vote for Derek Brooks because Derek Brooks might be the best NFL linebacker that ever played. And it's not like he was a scrub at Florida State. So I do think that that'll come into play. I just think it's crazy that it's Marvin Jones versus Derek Brooks, and whoever wins that will probably have to go up against Deion, who's going up against Terrell Buckley. Like, imagine being Terrell Buckley in this instance. And I know we got to go. It's been too long. But you want a Thorpe Award.
Just feels that way, Corey. It's only been like 42 minutes.
Well, that's a lot for this time. Terrell Buckley won a Thorpe Award. He holds the school record for career interceptions and season interceptions. He had 12 interceptions in one season, folks. Yeah. 12 as a cornerback. He was a great punt returner. I think he still holds the record for the NCAA return yards in a career for interceptions. He played in the NFL for over a decade and was pretty good. Imagine being that guy with that resume, an All-American, maybe a 2-time All-American, and you have no chance to ever be considered the best defensive back at your school. Awesome, because you had to come after Deion. So, yeah, Deion's probably going to roll Terrell Buckley, but Terrell Buckley, again, was a great college cornerback. He's a college football Hall of Famer, and he's got no chance to even get to the Elite Eight.
What was Charlie thinking on the final play of the Notre Dame game?
So, he thought that Matt Fryer, because if you watch it, you see Matt Fryer's hanging out at like the 3 or the 4, and he's on the sideline, and he looks open, especially when he throws it. But I think what Charlie said afterwards was there was a guy right behind Fryer, like right behind him, like eyeing him, and Fryer wasn't in the end zone. So as soon as the ball would have been heading towards Fryer, that guy would have just come up and tackled him at the back of the 3. And so his thought was, just get it near the end zone, I guess. I don't know. Okay. It wasn't maybe the best. I would have thrown a fade. They didn't have like a Kelvin Benjamin on that team, but throw a fade to Kevin Knox. He could jump, and maybe he get lucky. But, yeah. Maybe he could have run it in. He might have had a better chance of running it in and fumbling it.
You know, the NFL Network did a feature, like an hour long, on the 1991 Falcons. Do you have any memories about that one, Corey?
Was that the Too Legit to Quit, MC Hammer?
I mean, the NFL no one loves themselves more than the NFL loves themselves, which I love. But I'm like sitting there watching it. Like they just got
like
done.
this team deserved an hour special.
Well, they did an hour-long special on the Fog Bowl, like the '88 divisional playoff between the Eagles and the Bears. It's like it was a good game, and I get it. It was amazing. The fog, you couldn't see anything, but like we're gonna do a whole hour on just this game, and then they followed up like with a 91 Falcons. And it's like,
yeah, you like that, right? I think what happens is all those teams have their own highlight films that NFL Films produces.
Right.
For like that market. So if I was an Atlanta fan in 1992, I could go rent that at Blockbuster.
Right.
And I guess that's what they did, and they just have all those in the file. And unlike the ACC that continues to give us 2019 lacrosse games or matches, we got at least the NFL's switching it up a little with the 1991's Falcons highlights.
Well, no, it was fairly new because they had like Big Boy from Outkast. They had
Oh,
T.I.
really?
Oh,
My
talking about
fault.
how like Atlanta, I guess is there a sign like a marquee somewhere in Atlanta that shows how many people live in Atlanta?
Yeah, there used to be, and it would. I don't know where it is. I guess it's still there.
Yeah,
and
because they showed it. Because they
it
showed
would update with each birth. Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry Glanville's like when I lived here, and he was. I never knew he was an assistant coach at Georgia Tech, but he was. It was like 700,000 or 600,000 people living in Atlanta, and then now they showed it, and it said like 6,600,000 or so. And they're just talking about how they're talking about the Dungeon Crew and Outkast were trying to put Atlanta on the map, and then they saw MC Hammer, and then like Deion loves Hammer, and like they're trying to do it with the Falcons, and they get the all black jerseys, and I'm like. They won like one playoff game. They got smashed by the Redskins in the second round. What are we celebrating here?
Come on. It was everybody remembers. Everybody listening to this show remembers that great '91 Falcons team.
Yeah. Well, they had Favre, but they had Chandler. They had Chris Miller, and then Billy Joe Tolliver was second string.
Yeah.
And then they traded.
Favre almost apparently drank himself out of the league almost.
Yeah. It was up to like 250, like a pant size. I guess he said he wore like a 40-something pant size.
Still, you didn't have to trade him.
No. Well, the funny thing, too, is like he kept talking about how he wanted to get traded because Jerry Glanville was so rude to him. And then, Jerry Glanville was like, he would just call him Mississippi. He's like, Mississippi, you want to get in the game today? And he's like, yeah, coach. He's like, well, if 4 of my quarterbacks blow out their knee and the other one goes down in a helicopter, then maybe I'll put you in. And everyone's just laughing at Brett Favre.
Great.
Like, man. And then you traded him and you kept Billy Joe Tolliver as your insurance policy.
I feel like Brett Favre might have had the last laugh on that one.
And then the last thing I want to mention, again, the golden age of college football, watching the 80s games this past weekend, it made me think about, I wonder what happened in the 1986 Florida State-Miami game. So I went back to NoleFan.org and pulled
I was at that game.
What happened to your boy? Was it McManus or Chip Ferguson that got hurt in that game?
McManus got hurt, yeah. And so did Sammy Smith. Sammy Smith was running really well like he would do the next year when he ran for 189. He was running really well, but part of Sammy's issues at Florida State was he get hurt a lot, and I think he separated his shoulder in that game. But that was the game with the famous lateral on the kickoff return.
I don't even remember. I'll have to go watch that.
Keith Ross caught the ball 8 yards deep in the end zone, runs out to the 10, stops, throws it all the way across the field to Dexter Carter, who short hops it because it's not a good throw, and Dexter Carter races untouched for a touchdown.
All right. Yeah, Florida State was up like in the third quarter in that game.
Yeah, they were. But alas, Vinny Testaverde was really good, and once McManus was out of the game, they didn't have much of a chance.
There was a great quote by Bobby just talking about, he basically talking about Vinny Testaverde the way people talk about Tom Brady now. Just like, he's outstanding. But it made me just think about the good old days about when coaches would say what's on their mind. Like Jimmy Johnson was quoted, because in the story they talk about, obviously, Florida State was up, McManus goes down, and then I think Peter Tom Willis actually came in, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he might have. Peter Tom and Chip always seemed to alternate between on the depth chart.
Yeah, so he came in there. But anyhow, so Jimmy Johnson was quoted as saying something like, yeah, it didn't matter. Even if he wouldn't have gone down, we would have won the game anyways. Could you imagine if, a Clemson person would ask, Jimbo, hey, what if they didn't start, what was the guy that started in 14? Against Smag. Who was the quarterback they had?
I can never remember his name. I always want to say,
Stout?
Cliff Stout, maybe not Cliff Stout. That was Cole Stout.
I was going to say
his dad played for the Cowboys.
Yeah, but can you just imagine Jimbo's like, it doesn't matter. They could have started Deshaun Watson the whole game. It doesn't matter. We're still going to beat them because we're Florida State and they're Clemson.
Yeah.
It's just become
those days are over, Mom. Yeah, it was funny. They showed Jimmy Johnson talking about. I saw it was some on ESPNU about the '88 Notre Dame Miami game, the Catholics versus convicts.
Right.
And there was a really bad call where it looks like Cleveland Gary scores.
Yeah.
And they called it a fumble. And they're talking to Jimmy Johnson. He's like, "Look, if they don't blow that call, we win that game, and then we win another national championship." But they did, and we didn't. It's like, okay, well, I mean, it was still the fourth quarter, and that just would have tied up the score. You don't know that you would have won the game. Today's coach would have been like, look, if they don't blow that call, we probably win the game. It was a really big call, but, credit to them. Like, Jimmy Johnson wasn't having any of that.
Yeah, no hats off to anybody.
No.
No hats off. No days off over here. We're going to do something for the website, but not a podcast tomorrow. You'll all live. It'll be fine. Wednesday, though, be sure to download it. PK Sam shares his thoughts on, it's not called The Catch, but I don't know. We've never really dubbed it anything. Maybe somebody can think of
The Swindle in the Swamp. Right?
Freaking nerds. What a bunch of nerds.
I know it.
All right. He's Corey. I'm Azal. Thanks for listening to Wake Up Warchant, proudly presented by Zaxby's Indescribably Good.
Warchant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. Warchant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WARCHANT30. Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.